Hey guys, James from SIKKY Manufacturing. Today I'm going to show you a step-by-step installation guide on how you can install our dual caliper bracket on this E36 M3. Now this dual caliper bracket kit we make for the E46 as well as the non-M versions of both chassis. So pretty simple installation, but today I'm going to show you a step-by-step format to make this installation super easy and simple so you can pull this off in your backyard. Let's get started. So one thing to note, when you're on the website, this is available as just a caliper bracket kit, but if you select all the drop-down options, you can get literally everything you need to do this installation, from the handbrake to the handbrake mount to the calipers, pads, and even a line kit. So just make sure you check out the website for all that information, but it's all set up to make it super easy and remove all the guesswork so you don't have to go hunting for some random fitting or lines or whatever. So it's going to make your install super easy. Get it all in one box, open it up, have it all installed in a couple hours, and be ready to be out there ripping that handbrake. So we're going to get started here on the other side since this one's already done and tear into it. All right, so as you can see, we've got the wheel off. This thing's ready to go. The first thing we're going to do is get this stock caliper out of the way. And basically, once you unbolt this, you want to zip tie it or secure it somewhere where it's not going to be hanging from the brake line. This particular car, the line has already been disconnected. We were test fitting our quick change rear on this car, so it's kind of half dismantled suspension wise, but either way you get the point. So we're going to get this caliper off. Two 16mm bolts holding it to the spindle on the backside. Pretty quick and easy. And we're going to get the caliper out of the way. All right, now that we've got this caliper off, we need to get the rotor out of the way. So there's a 6mm Allen key. We'll take this bolt out of the side of the rotor here that's holding it to the hub. And then you should be able to pull the rotor off. It might need a little persuading if it's been on there a long time. Should be able to slide it off. So there's a couple different ways to get these factory e-brake shoes up, but we do need to get them out of the way. So I usually like to unhook the springs first. There's two on each side. That relieves the tension between the two pads. And you can see the little spring here. And also there's these little Allen key springs that hold the shoe to the side of the hub. So typically turn them about a quarter to turn, and it unhooks the shoe from the back side of the rotor because of this little T-slot that goes into the actual hub itself, or actually the dust cover on the back side. So pretty simple. Once you loosen that up, then you can pull the one shoe out of the way, and then same thing, this Allen key down here is going to release the other shoe, and the whole thing will just come apart like that. So you've got your two shoes, tensioner, and then the e-brake cables on the other side. We're not going to be reusing these. None of these e-brake or dual caliper kits out there can work with the factory shoes. It's just the additional caliper gets in the way of that whole mechanism. So we're going to deep six these suckers in the old trash can. All right, so next up is the dust shield. Because this dust shield is going to get in the way of the other caliper, we have to just remove it. There's 4 bolts holding it on. Two 10mm bolts. We're going to get these out of the way first. Can be a little bit rusty, so it might help to soak them down with some kind of penetrating oil, but looks like we lucked out, and these are fairly loose or coming off easily. Now we got to go to the other side where the e-brake cable mechanism is bolted and remove those 2 bolts. All right, so now we're going to get here and remove these 2 14mm ones on either side of the hole for the factory e-brake cable that's popping out here. So crack these loose and back them all the way out. All right, so once we got those 2 14mm bolts out, we should be able to loosen this up. You can slide it up to where it's freed up and no longer pressed onto the hub. All right, so one of the coolest thing about the SIKKY kit is it doesn't require you to press this hub out of the bearings, which some of them out there do. Real pain in the butt. Definitely want to avoid dual caliper kit that's going to require you to press this hub out of the bearing that's in the spindle. So, but it does require you to cut this, open this up enough to slide the dust shield off of the actual hub. So simple pair of tin snips makes quick work of it. You're going to come in here and these relief cuts that's already in the dust shield that were there from the original caliper, and we're going to cut all this away. Once you cut that chunk out, for a little extra room, you can open this up a little bigger, and then simply just bend it and open it up and slide it off. Not as easy as it sounded, but either way it came off in less than 45 seconds, so no big deal. It should look kind of like this when you're done, and then you can send this flying. All right, so next step, we got to get this e-brake cable out. It can be a bit of a bear to pull this thing out of here. It can get seized in, so sometimes you got to hit on it a little bit, pry on it, but once you start to loosen up, you can kind of wiggle it and it'll slide out. So we can get this out of the way, and technically you can remove these cables completely from the car at this point. All right, so at this point we're getting ready to put the new relocation brackets on here for the secondary calipers, but you can see this car's got a bunch of caked up heat shield that's pressed on here, so you want to make sure you get in here and clean this really good. If it's just small dusty pieces, you know, wire brush like this works, but you can see here there's a little bit of actual chunk of metal that's fused from the rust in there, so we want to probably use a flathead screwdriver or a chisel or something to get that out. But if you don't clean this off really well, you risk your brackets not seating right, and that's a key to this installation being done correctly. So we want to make sure that this gets cleaned up really nice. And what you're looking for back in here is this nice tight 90-degree where this bracket seats on this edge, just like the heat shield would seat on there. So this is where you got to make sure this is nice and square. It shouldn't be rounded or a bump. And if your bracket doesn't just slide on and fit, you'll know right away you got an issue. But either way, you just want to make sure that all that's nice and squared up, because we're going to be utilizing this top bolt hole and these two larger bolt holes down here by the old e-brake cable. So once you get that cleaned up, now we can move on to installing the actual bracket. All right, so now things are clean. We're ready to move on to mounting the caliper adapter bracket. So this bracket bolts on first. It's got this little square cut out here that aligns on the e-brake, and it slides up in there and fits in there nice and snug. So you got the smaller M6 bolt, gets a washer installed, and it goes in this top hole. We're just going to get it in there finger tight. And then the two larger M8 bolts are going to go down into these bottom holes. Same thing, we just get them snugged up by hand. Using a 5mm Allen wrench, we're going to come in here, tighten this top bolt down. And then a 6mm Allen wrench for the bottom socket head cap screws. All right, so that's good and tight. Probably recommend putting some Loctite on these too if you're at it, but it doesn't need to be on there, but it's definitely gonna make sure that this thing never loosens up on you. It's all gonna come back apart in this particular install, so we're not gonna do that, but definitely recommend it on all the hardware to add a little bit of Loctite. All right, so next step, we're gonna use the provided caliper adapter brackets that bolt to this bracket we just installed. You can use the 3/8/16 socket head cap screws and a washer. And pretty simple, you're gonna come in here, drop this behind, and then start these bolts. And using a 5/16 Allen socket or an Allen wrench, if you don't have an Allen socket, we're gonna get these brackets tightened down. One thing to pay attention to during your dual caliper bracket installation is this caliper bracket. Now it does go on one way, it can't be flipped around, so it's not a mirror image. So just make sure you use the provided drawing that's on the website and with your brake kit to make sure you're putting the part that has the longest end towards the top. So if you're on your passenger side or the right side if you're sitting in the driver's seat, this part's going to be towards the top and vice versa on the other side. So if you flip this around, your caliper placement won't be perfect or not as was designed in this system. But I'll show you a close-up of what that looks like. All right, so as you can see, this drawing shows you which side is the top side. So if you lay this bracket over and you've got it on there the right way, all the holes line up and you can see it's basically outlined. If you flip this over, try to outline the holes, you'll notice that they don't line up anymore, and you can see that this bracket is no longer in the right position. So just make sure you put this on the right side. So the top, no matter if it's left or right, this side's always going to be up on both sides. So pretty simple, just a special thing to take note of before you're doing the installation. All right, so now we're ready to get the rotor back on. We got both brackets bolted on and torqued down, and we're going to do this the same way we took it off. All right, so now we can reinstall the factory brake caliper. Now we're ready to move on to installing the Wilwood caliper. All right, so this next step is extremely important. So in your kit, you're going to have 4 washers that are specific to going between this caliper and the bracket we just installed. So if these aren't used or are missed or the wrong washers are used, your clearance could be wrong and your rotor alignment might be off. So if you find your calipers rubbing on the rotor, you probably messed this step up. So go back and check it out. But either way, these washers are designed to go in here. So what I like to do is take the 3/8/16 hex head bolt, which is 1 1/4 inch long, with a regular washer that's provided in the kit, install that, and then you take your special washer that has the clearance on the inside. So you've got these bolts installed like this, ready to go with your special washer on the inside. So you can take these and hold them on here like this, and then drop the whole assembly without the pads in and align it on the back side to get these bolts lined up. Helps if you get the top one started first, and you basically just pull that bolt out ever so slightly so that washer's hanging on the end of it, and it'll drop down over the bracket, and then you do the same thing on the bottom one. Just to show you a close-up, you can see that this bolt was dropped down over this bracket and that washer is already hanging on the end of the bolt. Yes, you could come in here and try to feed that in, but having done this a million times, it's so much easier. So if you want to save yourself some headaches, follow that method. But basically, once you got it in there, then you can just manipulate the caliper till the bolt lines up, and now that washer is in between there, and you can just tighten up your bracket from there. All right, so next step is you're going to want to put the pads in. Now keep in mind this installation is being done on an old rusty rotor. If this was a car, my own car, customer's car, or your car, I'd recommend doing a new rotor while you're doing this installation. But again, this is just an install guide. We're not putting this car on the road. This car doesn't even have an engine in it. So either way, we're going to drop these pads in. The other thing to note while we're talking about this, the caliper that comes with this kit is a 4-piston caliper, and you might be asking, you know, the caliper looks bigger than the factory one. The reality is it is, but if you've ever driven in a car that doesn't have a good e-brake system on it, there's nothing more frustrating than pulling on that hydraulic handbrake and just not having a good crisp lockup. So we like to run a sizable caliper, and it just makes for a much better performing and feeling handbrake system. If you're going to go through all this work, there's no point in putting some little piddly caliper on the back that's going to struggle to lock this back wheel up. So we find it's just better to put a big, nice caliper on there and have that crisp, firm lockup every single time. So I'm going to drop these pads in. Pretty basic, back side, front side, and it comes with a cotter pin in the caliper. So once you get the 2 pads in, just drop them down like that, sit in there real nice, and then you're going to slide this cotter pin through all the way through the holes down the back side. Then you're going to just bend the one end over so that pin can't slide out, and that's it for the brake pad install. All right, so like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, we provide everything you actually need front to back, and if you're lucky enough or smart enough to buy our line kit while you were buying this bracket kit, your life's going to be a whole lot easier. So these Wilwood calipers, the way they ship and are sold, they do not come with fittings that go in the back of the caliper. So the SIKKY BMW handbrake line kit comes with everything you need from the actual hydro all the way back to the caliper. So it makes this install super easy. And we're not going to get into showing you the line install, but pretty basic 1/8" NPT to -3 fittings that's thread into the back of the caliper. And then you're going to hook up these lines and run them up to your handbrake and bleed just as you would with any brake system. So obviously, like I said too in the beginning, you don't need to remove your caliper fully from the car. So this one was all tore apart as is, but you would need to bleed your actual brake system at this point. But if you do, no big deal, bleed it just like you would if you're doing factory calipers or whatever. Same thing with this Wilwood caliper. It's got 4 bleeder ports on it, so you don't need to bleed these bottom 2 ports. Obviously, air wants to go up. So once you start pumping and you crack these top 2, you do need to bleed the front and the back. Since it's 4 piston, it's basically almost like 2 separate calipers just bolted together. So pretty basic stuff. You know, we're gonna have a link at this end of the video. If you want to go find the description, you can go and find all these parts, and this whole installation kit can be bought as one big package, or you can pick and choose what you want at the checkout with a different drop down. So to learn more about the SIKKY dual caliper bracket kit and the other products we offer for the hydro systems for the E36 and E46, make sure you log on to sikky.com or get in touch with one of our knowledgeable sales reps today.